Because of your farm, my wife is now in the Bahamas. My son Victor's words hit me like a sudden slap. I had just come home after 3 long weeks of recovering from a surgery that nearly took my life, and the very first thing my own son said was this cruel remark. I stood frozen at the doorway of my own house, staring at Victor's mocking grin as he explained how he had sold one of my lands to pay for Vanessa's lavish honeymoon. My daughter-in-law, a woman who had never worked a single day in her life, was lying on tropical beaches, living off the money I earned with my sweat and sacrifice. And then, to my own surprise, I laughed. A deep laugh burst from inside me, rising from a place even I didn't expect. Victor looked puzzled, his smug smile beginning to fade. "Dad, what's so funny?" he asked nervously, his voice shaking. I kept laughing while removing the travel-worn green jacket from my shoulders. After 40 years of building a farming empire, of waking up before dawn to inspect every detail of my land, of giving up vacations and comforts to secure my children's future, this is how my eldest son welcomed me, with betrayal. "Oh, Victor," I said between laughter, "if only you understood what you've done." His expression shifted at once. The arrogance melted away like mist at sunrise. "What? What do you mean?" he asked, his hands beginning to tremble as I stepped closer. While I lay in a hospital bed, fighting between life and death, my son had committed the worst mistake of his life. The saddest part was he didn't even realize how foolish he had been. "The farm you sold, my boy," I said, wiping away a tear from my laughter. "Did you really believe that after a lifetime working the soil, I would leave my properties unprotected?" Victor swallowed hard. "But Dad, I had the deeds. Everything looked fine. The notary told me. The notary told you only what Vanessa wanted you to believe," I cut in sharply, because my dear daughter-in-law knew exactly what papers she was putting in front of you. Silence filled the room like a heavy shadow. I could see my son's mind racing, connecting pieces he didn't want to connect. "How much did you sell it for?" I asked calmly, though inside me burned a storm of anger and disappointment. $200,000, he whispered, unable to meet my eyes. "It was enough for the honeymoon and to cover some debts. Stay with me until the very end, because this story carries a powerful lesson you shouldn't miss. If the video touches your heart, give it a like, and in the comments tell me the name of your city so I know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story." I laughed once more, but this time the sound was sharp, bitter, carrying more pain than humor. $200,000, I repeated slowly, letting the words linger like poison on my tongue for land that was worth far more. I stopped myself from saying everything I knew. First, I wanted to discover how deep this betrayal ran, who else had a hand in it, and what other schemes had been made while I lay fighting for my life in a hospital bed. "Victor," I said, stepping toward the kitchen, "we need to talk. But before that, I want you to explain exactly how it all happened from the very start. And do not lie to me, because I already know more than you think." I heard him sink into a chair, his shoulders falling as if the weight of the world had crushed him. For the first time since he entered, he seemed to realize how badly he had gone wrong. "Dad, I never meant to hurt you," he said in a shaky voice. "Vanessa told me it was only a small farm you hardly ever used." "Hardly used," I repeated slowly, my anger burning through each word. That was her excuse. He lowered his head miserably. "She said we deserved this trip after everything we had faced. She swore you would never know since you were sick." His words trailed off suddenly, as if he had revealed more than he wanted. And then it hit me. They thought I would never return alive from that surgery. The thought dropped between us like heavy stones in still water. Victor raised his head sharply, his eyes already filled with tears. "No, Dad, we never believed that, never." "But you counted on it," I snapped, "because a dead father cannot take back his land, can he?" My son's sobs filled the kitchen like rain pounding on a metal roof. Tears streamed down his face as he shook his head again and again, as if he could undo the damage with denial alone. "Dad, I swear on Mum's memory, we never wanted you to die," he cried, wiping his nose with the back of his hand like a little boy again. Vanessa only insisted that we needed that money quickly. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat across from him, breathing in the familiar smell as I watched my son unravel before my eyes. For 38 years he had been my pride, my eldest child, bright and hard-working. When had he turned into this weak man who let himself be led by a woman who saw nothing but money where there should have been family? "Tell me everything," I said firmly, though my voice held no cruelty. "From the moment you came to the hospital until the day you signed those papers." Victor drew in a shaky breath, struggling to steady himself. "The day of your surgery, when the doctors said it was very dangerous, Vanessa completely lost control. She cried for hours. She cried for hours, insisting that if something happened to me, they would be left with absolutely nothing." "With nothing?" I repeated, lifting my eyebrow. "Don't you two have your own jobs, your own income?" "Yes, but," Victor admitted, "Vanessa kept saying that with the wedding costs and everything we had put into the house, we were drowning in debt, and the honeymoon we had dreamed about was impossible with what we earned." I sipped my coffee slowly, tasting its bitterness. "So you believed my land was the answer to your financial troubles?" "It wasn't like that," he protested, slamming his fist on the table. "Vanessa did the research. She went to the county office, checked the files, talked to lawyers. She showed me that you owned 8 properties, and one of them, St. Sebastian Farm, was the smallest and least productive." St. Sebastian, the name struck my chest like an alarm bell. Of course they had chosen that one. The land that seemed least important on paper, the one anyone without true business knowledge would think was disposable. "And you never checked anything yourself?" I asked, feeling my disappointment grow into something far more dangerous. "I trusted my wife," he whispered, looking away. "She studied business, Dad. She understands these matters better than I do." "Business administration is not the same as agricultural management," I reminded him firmly. "Running an office is very different from knowing the real worth of farmland." He stayed silent, clearly processing my words. I could almost see the gears turning in his mind as he started to realize how grave his mistake was. "Keep going," I demanded. "How did you get the papers? How did you sell my property without me?" Victor hesitated before answering. "Vanessa told me she had a contact at the county office, someone familiar with handling medical emergency cases. She said that when a person is in surgery and their life is at risk, the closest family member can make financial decisions if they hold power of attorney." "Power of attorney," I repeated coldly, the words leaving my lips like ice. "When did I ever give you power of attorney, Victor?" He turned pale, even more than before. "Vanessa said you had signed it years ago as a precaution, that it was stored in a bank-safe deposit box with your will." The falsehood was so bold, so carefully prepared, that for a moment I almost had to admire my daughter-in-law's cleverness. For 2 years she had lived as my son's wife. For 2 years she had played the role of the perfect partner, obedient, thankful, and devoted. But all that time behind the mask she was studying, preparing, and waiting for the right moment to strike. "Did you even look closely at the document?" I asked firmly. "Vanessa showed it to me," Victor admitted. "It carried your signature and everything. It looked real. She told me it was a legal paper you had signed long ago, just in case something ever happened to you." "Your wife forged my signature," I said sharply. "No, I mean I don't know. It seemed authentic," he stammered. I rose from my chair and moved toward the window. My land stretched endlessly before me, fields of sweat and sacrifice. Every tree I had planted with my own hands, every fence built by my effort, every animal raised with my dedication. "Victor," I said without turning back, "how long did it take her to find a buyer?" "Not long," he whispered. "Vanessa already had someone in mind, a businessman from Chicago who was interested in farmland." "And how exactly did Vanessa know this man?" I asked coldly. Silence filled the room like heavy fog. It lasted so long I turned to face him. Victor had buried his face in his hands, his shoulders trembling. "How did she know him, Victor?" I pressed. Finally, in a broken voice, he confessed. "She had been in contact with him before your surgery. She said it was only to check the market value of your properties." In that instant, The final piece slid into place. Vanessa hadn't acted because of my illness. She had been preparing this for months, perhaps even years. My surgery was only the opportunity she had been waiting for. "And where is my lovely daughter-in-law now?" I asked, a cold calm settling over me, the calm that always comes before the storm. "She's in the Bahamas," Victor admitted. "She left a week ago, claiming she needed rest after everything we went through." I let out a bitter laugh. Rest? How exhausting it must be to steal from your father-in-law while he's fighting for his life. "Dad, it wasn't theft," Victor argued weakly. "It was a legal sale. We had the deeds, the signatures, all forged signatures." I cut him off. Victor stiffened. "What do you mean?" "I mean that to sell St. Sebastian Farm, legally, it takes more than a supposed power of attorney. It requires my direct approval, my personal presence at the office, and 3 witnesses verifying my identity." I watched his face crumble as the truth hit him. "But the notary assured us everything was correct," he murmured. "Which notary, Victor? Tell me his name." His voice cracked. "Harold Morrison. His office is downtown." Harold Morrison, of course. The very same notary who had been investigated for shady practices the year before, the one already known for looking the other way whenever money was involved. "My son," I said calmly as I returned to my chair, "I believe you and Vanessa were not just fooled, but also became part of the scam." The silence after my words was so heavy, it seemed to press against the air. Victor stared at me with wide, frightened eyes, as if I had told him the sun no longer rose. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. "A scam," he finally whispered. "But Dad, I saw the documents myself. They looked completely legal." Harold explained everything step by step. I leaned closer, watching every detail of his expression. After 40 years of raising him, I could tell the difference between true guilt and a rehearsed act. What I saw now was raw panic, the fear of a man realizing he had been nothing more than a pawn in someone else's game. "Tell me every single paper you signed," I demanded, my tone steady, though inside my chest raged a storm. "First," he began nervously, "I signed a sworn statement saying you were temporarily incapacitated because of surgery. Then I signed as your representative to approve the sale, and finally I signed the purchase contract in your name." Each word hit me like another knife in the back, and I could not believe he had never once stopped to question why I, a man who had managed my own affairs for decades, would suddenly need my son to make business decisions for me. "Vanessa said it was normal in medical emergencies," he argued, "that it was a legal precaution so hospitals wouldn't put liens on property if the bills got out of control." I laughed bitterly. "Medical bills? Victor, I've had private health insurance for 20 years. My surgery costs were fully covered." I watched his face collapse even further. Every truth I revealed shattered another one of the lies Vanessa had so carefully planted. "But she showed me hospital invoices," he muttered weakly. "They said there were special charges not included in your insurance. Invoices that your wife conveniently presented to you. Invoices that weren't even under my name." I asked sharply. He nodded with shame. "They were listed under the family's name. Vanessa told me that's how hospitals handle this kind of thing." I stood once more and walked toward the drawer where I kept my most important files. I pulled out a folder and set it down on the table in front of Victor. "These are the real hospital bills," I told him as I opened it. "Look carefully. Every expense was paid by my insurance. The only thing I covered myself was $150 for some extra medicine." Victor reached for the papers with shaking hands. His eyes raced over every line, every number, as though he was staring at a death sentence written on paper. This can't be," he whispered. "The bills Vanessa showed me said $200,000. "Fake bills," I answered coldly, "created by Vanessa to pressure you into selling my land." He jumped to his feet so fast the chair crashed to the floor. Pacing the kitchen, he dragged his hands through his hair, just like he used to when he was a boy caught doing something wrong. "I have to call her," he muttered, fumbling for his phone. "I need to ask her. There has to be some explanation." Of course, I said with heavy sarcasm. Call your wife, who is enjoying luxury beaches with the money from a fraudulent sale. I'm certain she'll have a perfect excuse ready. He dialed Vanessa's number with nervous fingers. Once, twice, three times. No answer. She's not picking up, he said, trying again. How odd, I remarked bitterly. A woman who just pulled off a fraud doesn't want to answer her phone. Shocking. He called 5 more times, but each attempt went straight to voicemail. At last he slumped back into the chair, burying his face in his hands. Dad, he whispered in a broken voice, if what you're saying is true, then I committed a crime. You didn't just break the law, Victor, I replied sternly. You betrayed your father. You sold your family's legacy to fund the luxuries of a woman who has deceived you since the very day you met her. His tears poured down again as he cried, What am I supposed to do? How can I fix this? I sat down across from him, my heart aching despite the anger and disappointment. No matter the betrayal, he was still my firstborn, the child I once held in my arms, the boy I taught to walk, the young man who had filled me with pride on his graduation day. First, I said gently, you are going to tell me everything about this deal, every single detail, every talk, every document you signed. And when I say everything, I mean it. He nodded quickly, almost desperately. I swear, Dad, I'll tell you absolutely everything. Second, I continued firmly, you are going to help me fix this disaster, because I will never allow my land to remain in the hands of thieves. But the money is gone, he whispered. Vanessa used almost all of it for the honeymoon. Only 30,000 was left, and we used that to cover the debts on the house. Oh, my poor son, I said with a cold smile forming on my lips. If you really believe Vanessa only took money for a honeymoon, then you don't understand what is truly happening here. His eyes grew wide. What do you mean? I mean that while you thought you were selling a farm for $200,000, Vanessa already knew she was selling land worth far, far more. How much more? He asked weakly. I studied him in silence for a long moment. My son, my firstborn, sitting in front of me with tears in his eyes and fear in his heart. It was finally time for him to hear the truth, the kind of truth that changes everything. Victor, I said slowly, St. Sebastian Farm is not just ordinary farmland. It's not just a place for cattle or crops. Then what is it? He asked in confusion. It is the very core of my entire empire. Underneath that land, which looks unimportant on paper, there are 3 underground water wells that supply the whole region. On top of that, there are contracts with 5 companies that pay $1.2 million every year just to use that water. I watched the blood drain from his face. 1.2 million per year, Victor, every single year for the past 8 years, and those contracts are locked in until 2035. He clutched the edge of the table as though he might collapse. That means the land I sold for 200,000 is actually worth 15 million. The silence that followed was so complete that even the birds outside seemed to stop singing. Victor stared at me as if I had told because you didn't want to know. I shouted, years of frustration breaking free. Because it was easier for you to believe Vanessa's lies than to ask the hard questions. Because it was more comfortable to grab the money and ignore the truth rather than face reality. Victor flinched as if my words had struck him across the face. His eyes filled with tears again, but this time the emotion was heavier. It was no longer just guilt or fear. It was the crushing despair of a man realizing he had thrown away everything. Dad, he whispered brokenly, please tell me what I can do to fix this. Tell me how I can earn your trust again. I turned toward the window, staring at the land outside, the land I had built with my bare hands. Every acre carried years of labor, sacrifice, and sleepless nights spent planning for my family's future. And now, because of my son's foolishness, it all stood at risk. Do you know what hurts me the most in all of this? I asked, still staring out the window. It's not the money, Victor. It's not even the 15 million. What cuts deepest is that my own son saw me as an obstacle to get rid of. I never thought of you that way, he said quickly. I didn't bother to face him. Then explain to me why you didn't come and talk to me first. Tell me why you couldn't wait until I woke up from anesthesia to discuss such an important matter. He stayed silent because we both already knew the truth. He and Vanessa had purposely chosen to act when I was at my weakest. The surgery was on Wednesday, I continued, each word heavy with pain. I woke up Thursday afternoon. The documents were signed on Friday. Are you really going to tell me there wasn't enough time to wait? Vanessa said it was urgent, that the buyer had other options, and if we didn't move fast, we'd lose him, he muttered. Another lie, I exploded. Didn't you find it suspicious that everything had to be done in such a rush? Didn't it seem odd that your wife already had every answer prepared? Victor sank back into the chair, completely crushed. I have to call the notary, he muttered. I need to cancel the deal. With what money, Victor? I asked coldly. Where is the 200,000? Vanessa took most of it for the honeymoon, but we still have some left. We can get a loan. You don't understand, I interrupted sharply. This isn't about simply giving the money back. The buyer now legally owns St. Sebastian Farm, and I assure you he knows exactly what he bought. The realization struck him like lightning. The buyer, he whispered, he was working with Vanessa all along. Of course, I said bitterly. Do you really believe it was just luck that a buyer appeared so quickly, ready to pay in cash, without asking questions? His face twisted with horror. Then this was planned long before your surgery. Finally, I said with cold irony, my brilliant 38-year-old son understands he has been manipulated from the start. He buried his hands in his hair, tugging in despair. What am I going to do? How can I live knowing I destroyed my own family? That's something you'll have to figure out on your own, I answered, my chest tightening as something hardened inside me. But before you drown in self-pity, there's something else you need to hear. He slowly lifted his head, and the fear in his eyes showed he already sensed the worst was still ahead. What is it? He asked in a broken voice. Vanessa isn't in the Bahamas enjoying a honeymoon, I said firmly. Dad, what are you talking about? Victor asked, his voice shaking. I mean that while you sat here drowning in guilt and tears, your dear wife boarded a plane straight to the Cayman Islands. Do you know why? He shook his head slowly, though deep inside he already suspected the answer. Because that is where she opened an offshore account 3 months ago. An account where she didn't put 200,000, but $2 million. The silence that filled the room was suffocating. Victor stared at me as if I had just claimed the laws of nature had stopped working. Two million? He repeated like a broken machine. Yes, the buyer transferred the full 2 million directly to her. The 200,000 you received was nothing more than a tip she left you, so the lie would look real. I watched as his world collapsed. Everything he thought he knew about his wife, his marriage, his entire life, vanished in that moment. How do you know all this? He finally managed to ask. For the first time during this talk, I allowed a small smile, though it was far from warm. Because, son, while you blindly trusted Vanessa's words, I had already been investigating her for 6 months. Investigating? Vanessa? Victor stammered as though speaking the words for the very first time. Why would you investigate my wife? I walked to the cabinet and pulled out a second folder, much larger than the first, and dropped it heavily onto the table. The sound echoed like thunder. Victor stared at it as if it were a bomb ready to explode. Because I didn't reach 68 years of age by being naive, I explained while opening it. And because when a woman suddenly appears from nowhere, marries my wealthy son after only 6 months of dating, and never shows real interest in the family, I always become suspicious. Vanessa didn't know you were wealthy when we met, Victor argued weakly. Oh no, I replied coldly, lifting the first page from the folder. Here is the report from the private investigator I hired, Veronica Martinez, a former detective and specialist in marriage fraud cases. Do you want to hear what she discovered about your wife? Victor's face turned pale. You hired a private investigator on Vanessa. I hired a private investigator. I corrected sharply, and believe me, I had more than enough reason to do it. I began reading aloud from the file. Vanessa, age 32, graduate of Northwestern University in Business Administration, as she told you, But what she didn't tell you is that she was expelled in her final year for falsifying academic records. I saw Victor shut his eyes tightly, as if he could block out the truth, but I had only begun. Between 2019 and 2021, she worked at 3 different companies and was fired from all of them for stealing money and falsifying financial records. That can't be real, he whispered weakly. In 2022, she came to our town, I continued. Do you know why? He shook his head. Because she had a restraining order in Chicago. Her former boyfriend, a businessman named Patrick Aguirre, accused her of stealing $800,000 from his bank account. No, that's not possible, he muttered. I pulled out a photocopy and placed it in front of him. Here is the restraining order. And here is Patrick's sworn testimony describing how Vanessa earned his trust, gained access to his accounts, and vanished with his money. Victor held the paper with shaking hands. His eyes moved over the lines again and again, as if reading them enough times would somehow make the words change. This means it was all a lie from the start, he said brokenly. Of course it was a lie, I replied coldly. He fell back into the chair, the papers scattering on the table like proof of his own blindness. Why didn't you warn me before the wedding? He asked. Because you are my son, I admitted quietly, my voice trembling for the first time. And I hoped I was wrong. I hoped you had actually found real love, and that my doubts were just a father being too protective. But deep down I knew she was dangerous. I knew she was an opportunist and a liar. What I didn't know was that she was a professional criminal until after the wedding. I picked up the final set of files. This is what Veronica uncovered once Vanessa became your wife. What else is there? He asked, his tone broken. Plenty, I answered. She contacted property appraisers, consulted with estate lawyers, and even researched how to get legal power over family property. But the most revealing part, she used a secret email account to coordinate with the so-called buyer. Victor's head snapped up. You had access to her emails? Veronica has her ways, and Vanessa was careless enough to use the same password on multiple accounts. I handed him the printouts of emails exchanged between Vanessa and a man named Adrian Rodriguez. These go back 3 months before my surgery. Right here, you can see the entire plan laid out. Vanessa promised him control over St. Sebastian Farm in exchange for $2 million. Adrian knew the true value because Vanessa gave him stolen copies of my lease contracts. How did she even get copies of your contracts? Victor asked in disbelief. She went through my home office one evening when she came here for dinner, I explained coldly. While you and I sat in the living room talking, she pretended she needed the bathroom. Instead, she photographed every important document she could find. Victor dropped his head into his hands. I'm such a fool, a complete fool. Yes, I replied without mercy. You are. But now the real question is, what are you going to do about it? He slowly lifted his head, and for the first time that night, I saw something new in his eyes, determination. I'll help you get the farm back, he said firmly. I'll do everything I can to undo the damage I caused, even if it means testifying against my own wife. She was never your wife, I corrected sharply. That marriage was nothing but an act. He straightened his shoulders, his voice stronger. Then I'll fight to make it right. For the first time since this began, I allowed myself a small smile of approval. Good, because that's exactly what must be done. What do you need from me? Victor asked, and now he finally sounded like the man I had once raised, steady, resolved, free from the weakness that had clouded him earlier. I walked over to the kitchen phone. First, we're going to call Veronica. She's not only my investigator, she's also my lawyer, and she has important news for you. I dialed the number by memory. Veronica answered on the second ring, her voice sharp as if she had been waiting. Edward, how did it go with your son? Exactly as you said, I replied. He's broken but ready to cooperate. Can you come over? It's time to put the plan in motion. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Did you already tell him about the trap? Not yet. I thought it best to wait for you. Perfect, I'm leaving now. I hung up and turned back to Victor, who looked at me with total confusion. Trap? he asked nervously. "The trap we set for Vanessa and her partner," I said calmly as I sat down. "Did you really believe that after 40 years of managing businesses, I would leave my most valuable assets unprotected?" I don't understand," he admitted. "Of course you don't, because you've been looking at this whole situation as if you were the victim. But I was never the victim here, Victor. I was always the hunter." I watched him slowly absorb my words, his face shifting from doubt to something closer to admiration. "You mean you knew this was coming?" "Not the exact moment," I answered, "but I knew it would come, and that's why Veronica and I have been building this trap for months." "What kind of trap?" he asked carefully. I smiled, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the power of complete control return to me. "The kind of trap that makes the hunters become the hunted," I said firmly. Before Victor could react, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway reached us. Through the window, I spotted Veronica's grey Honda stopping right beside his car. "She's here," I told him as I stood to greet her. "Now you'll hear exactly how we're going to bring down your ex-wife and recover not only my land, but much more." Veronica stepped in through the back door without knocking, just as she always did. She was 55, her hair cut neatly in a salt and pepper bob, her sharp eyes scanning everything with precision. She had spent 2 decades as a police detective before starting her own investigation firm. Victor greeted her stiffly with a nod. "You look awful," she told him bluntly. "I feel even worse," he admitted. "Good," she replied. "That means you finally realize the seriousness of what you've done." She set her briefcase on the table, opening it with practiced hands. "Did your father tell you that we've been investigating Vanessa since before your wedding?" "Yes," Victor muttered. "He showed me a folder." "That was just the short version," Veronica said as she pulled out a much larger file. "This is the full report, Operation Lost Farm." "Operation Lost Farm," Victor repeated in disbelief. He turned to me, stunned. "You actually gave it a name? When you spend 6 months building a counterintelligence plan?" "Yes, you give it a name," Veronica answered dryly. "And this one was a complete success." She sat down across from us and spread the documents open. "First thing you need to understand, Victor, is that the sale of St. Sebastian Farm was never legal." "Dad already explained that to me," he said quickly. "No," she corrected, "not completely. It wasn't legal. Not only because the papers were forged, but because St. Sebastian Farm, at least the way it appears in public records, doesn't actually exist." Victor blinked several times, completely lost. "What do you mean it doesn't exist?" "I mean," Veronica explained, "that 6 months ago, when we first suspected Vanessa would try something like this, your father divided the property into 3 separate parcels. The St. Sebastian Farm, listed in the records, is just one of those sections, and it's the least valuable one." I turned to Victor, almost amused at the shock on his face. "The water wells and the $1 million contracts are in the other 2 parcels," I explained. "And those are owned by separate companies I created for the sole purpose of protecting the assets." "Corporate companies?" Victor asked, stunned. "Exactly," I said. "Companies I control." Veronica leaned forward to finish the point. "So what Vanessa sold was essentially 30 acres of plain pasture land with no real commercial worth. Adrian Rodriguez, the supposed buyer, believed he was purchasing rights to the water wells, but legally all he bought was cattle land." "So Vanessa didn't actually get the millions?" Victor asked with faint hope. "Oh, she did," Veronica replied with a sharp smile. "She received $2 million for land that was really worth the 200,000 you believed. It was a scammer being tricked herself, but the money didn't disappear." "What do you mean?" Victor asked quickly. Veronica pulled another paper from her folder. "When a deal is built on lies and forged documents, the law allows all connected assets to be frozen and recovered. And that's exactly what happened. 3 days ago, by a court order, Vanessa's offshore account in the Cayman Islands was locked. The 2 million is safe, under legal custody, until the case ends." Victor stared in shock, shifting his eyes between me and Veronica, as if we were speaking another language. "And there's more," Veronica continued. "A federal money laundering investigation. When the FBI checked her accounts during our case, they discovered other suspicious operations. A federal investigation, Victor gasped. Your wife isn't just a small-time con artist, I said firmly. She tied herself to a serious criminal who's been under FBI watch for 2 years. Victor's money from the sale was used to clean cartel funds, Veronica added. That means both she and your buyer are now being investigated for multiple federal crimes. Has Vanessa been arrested? Victor asked quickly. Not yet, Veronica answered with a grin, but not because we can't find her. We know exactly where she is, relaxing in a luxury suite in Georgetown, Cayman Islands, without realizing federal agents are tracking her every move. Victor shot to his feet. Federal agents? Why are they involved? Because Adrian Rodriguez isn't just a scammer, I explained coldly. He's the main money launderer for one of the most powerful Colombian drug cartels. And Vanessa, without even knowing the full picture, became his partner. And by using the $2 million for those laundering deals, Veronica added, she officially tied herself into an international conspiracy. This is insane, Victor whispered, sinking back into his chair. You're saying my wife didn't just trick me, she got involved with drug traffickers. Ex-wife, I corrected firmly. And yes, that's exactly what we're saying. Veronica shut one folder and opened another. But here's the part that should matter most to you, Victor. The part where you can help bring them down. What do you need me to do? Victor asked anxiously. Veronica leaned closer. Vanessa is going to try to contact you within the next 48 hours. Veronica leaned forward. Our sources say she's starting to panic because she can't reach her money in the bank. How do you even know that? Victor asked quickly. Because for the past week, we've been intercepting every move she makes, Veronica replied calmly. Every call, every text, every attempt to get online, federal agents have been watching it all. I stepped in. When she calls you, Victor, she'll try to play innocent. She'll tell you it's all a mistake, that she can fix everything, that she'll give the money back. She'll make promises she has no intention of keeping. So what do? He asked nervously. Play along, Veronica instructed. Make her believe you still trust her. Get her talking. Make her admit everything over the phone. A confession, I added firmly, one that's recorded. That single call will trap her and Adrian Rodriguez permanently. Victor's eyes flicked between us, his face pale but thoughtful. And if I do this, can we really get the farm back? I put my hand gently on his shoulder. Son, when this operation is over, we won't just have the farm again. We'll recover the millions, collect damages, and even gain assets from Rodriguez once he's in prison. How much are we talking about? Victor asked weakly. Veronica gave a thin smile. At least $12 million. 12 million, Victor whispered, as though repeating a spell. How is that even possible? Veronica flipped to a new section of papers. Because when someone commits fraud using your property in a criminal scheme, the law lets you claim not only the original value, but also the illegal profits gained through RICO statutes. On top of that, she added, Rodriguez owns assets that will be seized when he's arrested, like a penthouse in Miami worth $3 million, a yacht valued at $2 million, and accounts across 3 countries. And since Vanessa was his partner in the original fraud, the law gives us rights to part of those assets under civil forfeiture. Victor ran both hands through his hair in disbelief. This feels unreal, like something out of a movie. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it, I said firmly, and prepare yourself, because in the next few hours, your life is going to change forever. As if to prove my words, Victor's phone suddenly started ringing. The 3 of us froze in place. Veronica reacted first. Who is it? She asked, stepping closer to the screen. Victor's face drained of color. It's Vanessa. Perfect, Veronica murmured, pulling a small device from her briefcase. It's sooner than expected, but we're ready. What is that? Victor asked, pointing nervously at the device. It's a professional call recorder, Veronica explained calmly. Perfectly legal as long as one person on the line agrees to it. She quickly connected the device to Victor's phone. Are you ready for this? She asked. I don't know what to say, Victor admitted nervously. Just follow my lead, I told him as I sat close by. Pretend to be the hurt husband, more confused than angry. Let her talk, let her explain herself. The more words she gives us, the stronger our case will be. The phone continued to ring. Victor's eyes darted toward me, full of panic. I can't. What if I ruin everything? You won't ruin anything, I assured him firmly. Remember, she's the one who needs you now, not the other way round. She's desperate. Veronica nodded in agreement. Pick up. Put it on speaker. With shaky fingers, Victor answered the call and turned on the speaker. Victor, darling, finally. Vanessa's voice came through, high-pitched and anxious. I've been calling you all day. Hello, Vanessa, Victor replied, his tone stiff and uneasy. How's your honeymoon? There was a pause on the other end. Then she said, Victor, I need to talk to you. It's serious. Are you alone? Veronica gave me a quick signal. I leaned close and whispered, say yes. Yes, I'm alone, Victor answered. What's wrong? You sound upset. It's the farm sale, she said in a rush. There's a problem. What kind of problem? Victor asked, sticking to the plan. The money, Vanessa confessed. I can't get to it. The account is frozen. The bank says there's an investigation, but they won't tell me what it's about. I shared a quick glance with Veronica. It was happening exactly as we expected. What account are you talking about? Victor asked, hitting her with the perfect question. A long silence followed, long enough that for a moment it seemed she had hung up. Finally, her voice returned, hesitant. Victor, there's something I didn't tell you about the payment. What didn't you tell me? He pressed. The buyer, he wanted to pay differently, for tax reasons, you understand? He asked me to open a special account. Veronica smiled and gave us a thumbs up. Vanessa was digging herself deeper. And this special account, Victor continued sharply, where exactly is it? In the Cayman Islands, she admitted quickly. But it's completely legal, my love. It's just how large transactions are handled for tax purposes. Vanessa, how much money is sitting in that account? Victor asked, pushing harder. Silence again. A silence so heavy we thought the line had dropped. Vanessa, are you still there? He asked. Her voice returned, thinner, weaker. Yes, I'm here. Victor, I need you to trust me. There's more than I originally said. Much more. How much more? Victor demanded. The buyer wanted the deal so badly that he offered extra. Extra. Victor's voice rose, not out of acting, but out of real anger. How much more, Vanessa? Victor's voice cracked as real anger slipped through. 2 million, Vanessa? She rushed to answer. Yes, Victor, but I can explain everything. 2 million, he shouted, standing and pacing around the room. You're telling me you got $2 million and never told me? I planned to tell you when I returned, she said quickly. I wanted it to be a surprise. I thought we could use the money for a bigger house, to finally build the future we dreamed of. Veronica scribbled on a notepad and held it up. Ask why the account is frozen. Vanessa, Victor pressed, if this money is legal like you say, why is the account frozen? I don't know, darling. That's why I'm calling you. I need you to come here and help me fix it. Come where? To the Cayman Islands. We can solve this together. Veronica shook her head fiercely, signaling no. Victor steadied his voice. I can't come, Vanessa. Dad just came back from the hospital. He needs me. Her voice sharpened with fake concern. Your father is back. How is he? Veronica rolled her eyes in disgust. He's recovering, Victor answered. He's weak. The doctors say it will take weeks. Of course. But does he know about the sale? Veronica quickly wrote another note. Say yes. Watch her reaction. Yes, Victor said firmly. I told him. He wasn't happy that we made such a big decision without asking him. What exactly did he say? She asked nervously. He was upset. He said St. Sebastian Farm was much more important than we realized. More important? In what way? He didn't give details, just said he had special plans for that land. A heavy silence followed. I could almost hear Vanessa calculating, trying to figure out how much we actually knew. Finally, she spoke again. Victor, I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. Did your father suspect something about us, about the sale? Veronica and I shared a quick look. We had been waiting for this moment. Why do you ask that? Victor said carefully. Because strange things are happening. The bank is asking unusual questions about where the money came from, about my relationship with you, about your family. What kind of questions? Victor pushed. I think someone reported the transaction as suspicious. Veronica scribbled fast. Ask who she thinks it was. Who do you think reported it? Victor asked. Vanessa hesitated, then lowered her voice. Only one person comes to mind. Someone who knows too much about us and has the power to interfere. Who? Your father, Victor. I think your father figured out what we were doing. I think he set a trap. Victor glanced at me, and for the first time, admiration filled his eyes. You really believe my father is capable of that? Victor, your father is far smarter than we gave him credit for, she whispered. I think we underestimated how much he truly knows about law and business. Veronica gave a discreet thumbs up. Vanessa was openly admitting her guilt while confirming this had all been planned. Vanessa, are you saying my father already knew what you were about to do? Victor asked. No, well yes, but not in the way it sounds, she stammered. I only wanted to be ready in case the chance came up. A chance for what? Victor pressed. To secure our future, Victor, so we wouldn't have to live under your father's shadow forever. Under his shadow? Victor's tone hardened. I have my own job, my own income. But it's never enough for the life we deserve, Vanessa shot back quickly. Your father has millions, Victor, millions that will be yours one day anyway. Veronica quickly scribbled on paper, get her to confess about the forgery. Victor cleared his throat. Vanessa, I need you to tell me the truth about something. What is it? The documents I signed, were they all real? There was a pause. Why are you asking that? Because my father swears he never signed any power of attorney. Your father is just confused, sweetheart. Anesthesia can cloud memory for weeks. Are you sure you want to doubt me now? He's filling your head with nonsense. Veronica smiled quietly. Perfect, she mouthed. Vanessa had basically admitted the papers were fake. Victor continued, following Veronica's direction. It's not that I doubt you, Vanessa, but Dad wants to see the original file. He says he needs to check it for his records. Why would he need to check something he signed himself? She asked sharply. Because he insists he never signed it, and you know how careful he is with legal papers. The silence stretched so long, Victor almost thought she had hung up. At last Vanessa spoke again, her voice lower, colder. Victor, I think your father is only pretending not to remember. He wants to stir up problems for us. Why would he do that? Victor asked. Because he never liked me. From the very beginning he thought I wasn't good enough for you. Veronica wrote another quick note. Ask where the original document is. Where is the original, Vanessa? Victor pressed. If we can show it to him, this whole misunderstanding will be cleared. It's in a safe place, she replied vaguely. What kind of safe place? In a bank deposit box. With your father's other important papers. Veronica and I exchanged sharp glances. Vanessa was inventing lies on the spot, only sinking deeper. Which bank? Victor demanded. First National downtown. Your father gave me access to his deposit box before the surgery. My father gave you access to his deposit box? Victor's voice rose sharply. When did this happen? The day before your surgery, Vanessa answered quickly. He said that in case of an emergency, someone in the family should be able to reach his important papers. Veronica scribbled furiously on her notepad. That deposit box doesn't exist. Your father never had one. Victor pressed on. Vanessa, are you sure it was at First National? My father always used Wells Fargo. A pause followed. Yes, you're right. I mixed it up. It was Wells Fargo. And yes, I have a copy of the keys. Veronica shook her head and wrote, lie after lie, keep pushing. Victor asked calmly, could you go to the bank tomorrow and bring the document? That way we can show it to Dad and settle this once and for all. I can't come back right now, she said quickly. I need to sort out this account issue first. What account issue? Victor asked, his tone firm. If everything is legal, why isn't it easy to fix? It's complicated, Vanessa muttered. The bank is asking questions about Victor, the buyer. What kind of questions? Victor pushed. They're checking his financial history, his other transactions. It looks like he's being investigated. Veronica smiled and gave 2 thumbs up. Vanessa had just admitted knowing about Victor's legal troubles. Investigated for what? Victor demanded. I don't know exactly. Something about shady dealings in his business. Vanessa, Victor asked carefully. Did you already know about these problems before making the deal with him? Of course not. How could I? She snapped defensively. Veronica quickly wrote another note. Ask how she met him. So tell me, how did you even meet Victor in the first place? I already explained I had contacts in the real estate market. But specifically, how did you meet him? Through a mutual friend, she said after a hesitation. What friend? Someone from my old job. Which job? I thought you worked at a small administration office, Victor pressed. Another long silence followed. Yes, that's right. Then how did that job connect you with people who buy million-dollar farms? Victor asked sharply. Victor, why are you questioning me like I'm some criminal? I'm not interrogating you, he said coldly. I just want to understand how we ended up in this mess. The truth is simple, she snapped back. I made a smart deal. The money is only blocked for bureaucratic reasons, and your father is stirring trouble because he never liked me making decisions without his approval. Veronica slid another note forward. Get her to admit how much she really knew about Victor. Vanessa, Victor said firmly, I need you to be completely honest with me. How long have you actually known Victor? Why does that matter? She countered quickly. Because if this turns into a legal case, I need every detail, Victor replied. I've known him for a few months, maybe 4 or 5, Vanessa admitted. 4 or 5 months, Victor repeated sharply. Didn't you say you only spoke to him when Dad got sick? Yes. Well, I had talked to him casually before about the real estate market. Did you ever mention my father's properties? Victor pressed. Maybe I said your family owned land in the area, she answered vaguely. Veronica quickly scribbled. This proves she planned it ahead. He was interested in your dad's land. He was interested in rural properties in general, Vanessa added quickly. Vanessa, did you tell him specifically about St. Sebastian Farm? Victor asked. I might have mentioned it. When exactly? Before or after Dad's surgery was scheduled? Silence filled the line, so long that Victor checked the phone to make sure the call was still active. Vanessa, are you there? Yes, I'm here, she replied coldly. But Victor, I don't understand why these details matter now. They matter, Victor said firmly, because I need to know if this was carefully planned or just a rushed choice. It was just a chance that appeared during a family crisis, she insisted. Nothing more. Veronica wrote another note. Ask her about the $2 million versus $200,000. Vanessa, I don't understand something about the money, Victor said. What don't you understand? She asked defensively. You told me the farm was sold for $200,000, but now you're saying there's $2 million in the account. I already explained, she snapped. The buyer offered more than the original deal. When did he offer more? Before or after the papers were signed? After, when he saw the land and realized its real value. Its real value, Victor demanded. What value could he see that we didn't? Victor, why are you interrogating me like this? You should be glad we got more than expected. I'm questioning you, Victor replied firmly, because my father says that land isn't just worth $2 million. He says it's worth at least $15 million. The silence that followed was so heavy, it felt like the air itself froze. On the other end, Vanessa was no doubt calculating every word. Finally, she replied, That's impossible. Your father is just exaggerating to frighten you. Are you sure? Victor asked, because he sounds very certain about his numbers. Victor, he's trying to turn you against me, she said sharply. Or maybe, Victor countered, you tricked me into selling something far more valuable than I knew. I would never do that. Vanessa shot back. Then explain why a man would pay $2 million for land supposedly worth only $200,000. He must have seen potential we missed, she argued. Or maybe he knew exactly what he was buying because you gave him information I didn't have. Victor, you're just being paranoid. Am I paranoid? He shot back. Or am I finally seeing things clearly? At that moment, Vanessa's voice shifted. It grew cold, sharp, and calculating. The gentle, anxious tone was gone, and her real self finally appeared. You know what, Victor? She sneered. Your father has filled your head with lies. You're behaving exactly how he wanted. This was his plan all along. He knew that once you found out about the full amount, you would start to question me. He set this up to turn you against me. Veronica quickly scribbled a note. Keep pushing. She's about to reveal everything. Vanessa, Victor asked carefully, are you saying my father knew beforehand what you were planning? Your father is far more clever than we ever imagined, she admitted bitterly. What do you mean we? Victor pressed. Who else is involved in this? There was a pause. No one else, just us. Us, Victor repeated sharply. You mean me too? All I did was sign papers like a fool, while someone magically had $2 million ready in just 3 days. That doesn't sound normal. Who keeps that kind of money lying around? Serious buyers always have money available, Vanessa snapped. But Victor's tone hardened. Vanessa, it's time you stop hiding and tell me the full truth. Her voice turned venomous, dripping with spite. The sweet, caring wife act was gone completely. You want the truth, Victor? Fine, I'll give it to you. Veronica and I leaned closer. We knew we were finally going to hear the confession we had been waiting months for. Your father was right from the very start, she hissed. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew the real worth of that land long before I married you. Victor went rigid, as if lightning had struck him. Before we got married, before I even met you, my dear husband, she said mockingly. Do you honestly think it was chance that I appeared at that bar on that exact night, dressed as the kind of woman you dream about? Her words cut like knives. I studied you for 3 months before our so-called first date. I knew you went to that bar every Friday. I knew you had just ended things with your ex. I knew you were the kind of man who fell in love fast with women who seemed fragile but strong at the same time. Veronica touched my arm and whispered, "This is even better than we hoped." So it was all lies? Victor asked, his voice breaking. Not all, she replied coldly. Some moments with you I actually enjoyed. You are a good man, Victor. Too good, too trusting, too easy to control. And that's why I had to marry you. A girlfriend can only ask so many questions, but a wife has the legal rights I needed to get to your father's documents. Victor turned to me, his eyes wet with tears. I gave him a steady nod, urging him to push forward. How long were you planning to take the farm from us, he asked. Take it? No, Victor, Vanessa replied sharply. It wasn't stealing, it was smart business. I had been planning it since the day I married you. Your father's surgery just gave me the perfect chance to act sooner. And how did you even know about the water contracts? Victor demanded. Because unlike you, I did my homework, she said coldly. I hired my own investigator, looked into public records, and even spoke to workers on the farm. I knew everything before I stepped into this family. Veronica quickly wrote on her pad. Ask about Adrian Rodriguez. Vanessa, how long have you really known him? Victor asked. Adrian and I have been partners for 2 years, she admitted. He's an expert at finding rural properties that are undervalued but full of potential. Partners in what exactly? Victor pressed. In different ventures, she explained smoothly. Your father's farm was just one piece of a larger plan. We weren't scamming, we were taking opportunities. If landowners don't know the true worth of what they own, that's not our fault. Victor jumped from his chair, pacing furiously. Vanessa, do you realize you've just admitted to federal crimes? Crimes, she said with an icy laugh. What crimes? Everything we did was by the book. You forged my father's signature, Victor shouted. Vanessa's answer came like a blade. Prove it. The coldness in her voice sent chills through me. This was no longer the timid woman Victor had loved. This was a calculating criminal. Prove it, she repeated, because there's no way to show that signature wasn't signed by your father in a moment of clarity before his surgery. Veronica's eyes lit up and she scribbled. She's admitting the forgery without saying it directly. So, Vanessa, Victor pushed, you're admitting you faked documents. I'm not admitting anything that can be held against me, she said sharply, but I will tell you one thing. Your father is never getting that farm back. Why not? Victor asked. Because Adrian already sold it, she said with satisfaction. It's now under the name of an offshore company in Panama, and they've already started exploiting the water wells. My chest tightened as if someone had struck me hard. Veronica gave me a worried glance, but I motioned for her to keep the recorder running. How much? Victor demanded. $12 million, Vanessa replied. 4 million is mine, 8 is Adrian's. Your share? Victor's voice cracked. So the two of you not only tricked my father, but also cheated the first buyer. That first buyer, Vanessa smirked, was Adrian's shell company. The whole setup was designed to move ownership quickly, clean and without questions. Victor stared at her in disbelief. Vanessa, do you even realize you're admitting to a huge criminal conspiracy right now? Conspiracy, she scoffed. No, Victor. I'm just showing you how the real world works. Your family held that farm for years and never used it to its full value. We're the ones unlocking its potential, not by stealing, but by taking it legally and managing it better, Vanessa argued coldly. Veronica quickly wrote on her notepad, "Ask her about the frozen money." Victor followed the lead. "If it was so legal, Vanessa, why is your account frozen?"